The Grand Hotel ballroom shimmered with sparkling chandeliers and polished floors that reflected the soft golden light. Everywhere, there was movement, but not the kind of rush that comes with chaos. It was a controlled, deliberate movement, like a dance, where everyone knew their steps. Guests in expensive suits and elegant gowns mingled, laughter mixing with the delicate clinking of glasses. Waiters moved carefully between them, carrying trays of champagne, small bites, and glasses of sparkling water. They smiled, bowed slightly when necessary, and spoke just loud enough to be polite, but not intrusive. The whole scene had an air of sophistication, almost like it had been carefully choreographed, and yet, it moved naturally, as if by itself. Among the waiters, one stood slightly apart, carrying a tray with precision, but not for show. This person had learned the rhythm of the job over many nights, understanding the subtleties of attention and presence. With a quiet smile and calm hands, the tray balanced effortlessly, and when a guest asked for something extra, it was given without hesitation or fuss. The movements were practiced, almost invisible, yet they required a deep awareness of everything happening around. The soft murmur of conversation filled the air, punctuated occasionally by bursts of laughter or the low hum of appreciation for a well-poured glass of wine. Guests complimented each other's attire, discussed recent trips or the latest theater shows, and shared polite anecdotes. The waiter observed quietly, listening just enough to catch interesting details, noting the tiny gestures people made, how one guest tapped a finger on the table when deep in thought, or how another adjusted the cuff of their sleeve nervously. The ballroom had a grand piano placed near the far end, gleaming under the chandelier light. Its polished black surface reflected the elegant surroundings, and though it sat silent at the moment, there was an expectation, almost a promise, that beautiful music would soon fill the room. The scheduled pianist had not yet arrived, but that seemed to matter little. The crowd's attention was elsewhere, engaged in their own worlds. The waiter occasionally glanced at the piano, as if checking in on an old friend from a distance. It was a habit, a subtle acknowledgement of something that was familiar yet separate from the job at hand. Guests moved gracefully between conversations, holding glasses and small plates, their movements precise and careful. Each interaction seemed polite but distant, as if there were invisible rules that guided every word and gesture. The waiter navigated this landscape with ease, offering a smile here, a refill there, but always blending into the background, unnoticed by most. There was comfort in being unnoticed, a freedom to observe without intrusion. The eyes sometimes met in brief acknowledgement, and in those fleeting moments, a sense of connection passed silently, like a small secret shared in passing. Behind the scenes, the staff worked in a carefully timed rhythm, coordinating each other's movements without words. A tray needed to be cleared from one table just as another guest raised a hand, and it was done seamlessly, almost magically. The waiter had learned to anticipate these small needs, moving almost before a request was made. This skill was not just about efficiency, it was about understanding people, noticing the subtleties of their expressions, and responding in a way that felt natural and unobtrusive. The scent of fresh flowers and polished wood mingled with the delicate aroma of fine food, creating an atmosphere that was both calming and invigorating. The waiter moved through this environment like a shadow, always present but never imposing, always attentive but never intrusive. Each step was measured, each gesture deliberate, and yet there was a fluidity that made it appear effortless. The guests were unaware of the careful choreography behind their seamless experience. All they saw was perfection, the kind that seemed to exist naturally. At the piano, the empty bench seemed to wait, patient and expectant. The polished keys glimmered softly in the light, hinting at the music that could emerge. The waiter's eyes occasionally drifted to it, imagining the sounds that could fill the room. The way notes could rise and fall, carrying emotions and stories without a single word. It was a secret dream, quiet and private, tucked away behind the careful smile and poised movements required by the job. The evening continued with its gentle rhythm. Glasses were refilled, plates cleared, and guests chatted, laughed, and occasionally paused to admire the elegant surroundings. The waiter's attention shifted seamlessly between tasks, never lingering too long in one place, but always aware of everything. The soft hum of conversation, the delicate footsteps across polished floors, and the gentle clink of silverware created a kind of symphony, a backdrop for something extraordinary that had yet to happen. As the night went on, there was a subtle shift in the air. The guests, comfortable and confident in their surroundings, began to look toward the piano, sensing the absence of music. The waiter, too, felt the tension in the room, an almost imperceptible expectation. It was as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for a moment to change everything. The quiet anticipation was electric, but it was gentle, almost unnoticed by those not attuned to it. In this delicate balance of elegance and expectation, the waiter moved with practiced ease, delivering trays, offering smiles, and maintaining the invisible rhythm of the evening. Yet beneath the surface, there was a quiet heartbeat, a secret that no one else in the ballroom could guess. The music that lingered in the mind, the melodies that had been played in private, now hummed quietly beneath every step, every gesture. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most extraordinary things were hidden in the most ordinary moments. Waiting patiently for the right time to emerge, the guests continued to enjoy the evening, unaware of the quiet tension building, the anticipation that was not spoken but felt in every glance toward the grand piano. The waiter carried on, blending into the background, observing, and yet dreaming quietly. There was a sense of calm in the movement, a rhythm that connected the staff and the guests in an unspoken understanding. And in the middle of this luxurious, glittering ballroom, a simple truth lingered. Extraordinary moments often arrive without warning, quietly, and they can change everything in a single instant. The evening had reached a gentle rhythm when a sudden murmur traveled across the ballroom. The scheduled pianist had not yet arrived, and a wave of quiet concern spread among the staff. The host, a tall man with an air of authority, walked briskly toward the grand piano, speaking quietly into a phone. His movements were sharp, almost urgent, but there was no real panic. The guests, busy in their conversations, noticed only small signs of unease, like a quick glance toward the piano or a slight furrow of a brow. The waiter, carrying a tray of delicate pastries, felt a flutter of anticipation. Something in the air had shifted, a sense that the night might take a different turn. The piano, previously a silent witness to the elegance of the room, seemed to call out quietly, its black and white keys gleaming under the chandeliers. The waiter had always admired the instrument, had imagined sitting at it in private moments when no one was watching, letting music flow freely. Tonight, though, it seemed as if the opportunity might come in an unexpected way. The host returned from his phone call, a look of mild desperation on his face. He approached the staff, asking quietly if anyone could play. Most of the servers exchanged glances, unsure and hesitant. It was not a job requirement, after all. But the waiter, moving calmly through the room, felt a subtle pressure, a voice inside urging to step forward. The heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the sudden possibility of something extraordinary. The guests, unaware of the discussion unfolding behind the scenes, continued their elegant movements, laughing softly and sipping drinks. One guest leaned slightly toward another, commenting on the beauty of the chandeliers, while a few others admired the polished floors that reflected the shimmering light. The waiter moved between tables, offering small bites and refilling glasses, all the while listening to the host's low conversation near the piano. There was a decision to be made, and the air seemed charged with expectation. Finally, the host turned to the waiter with an almost pleading expression. Could the waiter play, even just a little, until a replacement was found? It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of the evening's mood. The waiter hesitated, a breath caught in the chest, as the eyes of the host lingered, waiting. There was no time to think deeply. It was a moment that demanded courage and trust in one's own hidden abilities. The past practice, the quiet moments spent imagining melodies, now felt like preparation for this very instant. With a small nod, the waiter approached the piano. Each step was deliberate, measured, yet carried a sense of gravity. The guests, noticing the movement, began to turn their attention slowly toward the piano. Whispers filled the air as curiosity replaced casual conversation. Who would play? The waiter paused for a heartbeat before seating, hands resting lightly on the polished keys. The world seemed to hold its breath, the room a mix of anticipation and quiet expectation. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, as if testing the waters. The sound filled the room gently, weaving through the air like a delicate thread. Guests leaned forward slightly, eyes widening in surprise, catching the unexpected depth and emotion. The music was not loud or showy, but it carried a sincerity that demanded attention. The waiter's fingers moved with precision, each key pressed with confidence, telling a story without words. There was a rhythm, a flow, and a quiet intensity that drew the listeners in. At first, some guests exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what to make of the performance. It was unusual, unexpected, a contrast to the usual elegance of the evening. But slowly, The music began to weave its way into their hearts, softening expressions and quieting chatter. The laughter and murmurs faded into an attentive silence. The waiter's concentration never wavered, though beneath the calm exterior, there was an awareness of the crowd's gaze, a gentle pressure that only fueled the performance. Each note carried emotion, rising and falling with a natural cadence. The music told a story of hope, longing, and quiet courage, resonating deeply with those who listened. The waiter's hands moved across the keys with growing confidence, each melody more assured than the last. The room, previously filled with polite conversation and clinking glasses, was transformed. Eyes glistened with emotion, some guests covering their mouths in awe, others leaning forward, entranced by the unexpected beauty. A hush fell over the room as the melody reached a gentle crescendo. The waiter's eyes were closed now, fully immersed in the music, allowing every note to flow freely. The guests watched in silence, captivated by the unexpected depth of talent before them. It was not just the skill, but the emotion, the story behind each note, that held them spellbound. The room seemed suspended in time, the grandeur of the surroundings fading into the background as the music took center stage. The waiter's mind was clear, focused entirely on the music. Every movement, every press of a key, felt natural and right. There was a connection, almost intangible, between the music and the audience. It was as if the room itself was listening, holding its breath, swaying gently with each note. The guests, often reserved and composed, were now openly moved, experiencing a shared moment that transcended status, wealth, and etiquette. As the final notes lingered, the silence stretched, almost reluctant to break. The audience absorbed the last echoes, the subtle vibration still resonating in the air. Then, slowly, the room erupted in applause. Not the polite, expected clapping, but genuine, heartfelt appreciation. Some guests rose to their feet, others wiped away small tears, and the waiter remained at the piano, hands resting lightly on the keys, absorbing the unexpected yet powerful response. The host approached once more, this time with a wide smile and a tone of amazement. The performance had exceeded all expectations, turning an ordinary evening into something extraordinary. Guests were still murmuring to one another, speaking of the emotions stirred and the unexpected talent revealed. The waiter, finally allowing a small smile, felt a quiet pride. This moment, spontaneous and unplanned, had transformed the night and touched people in ways that nothing else could. As the music settled into memory and the guests returned to their conversations, there was a lingering sense of magic in the air. The waiter's heart still raced slightly, a mix of relief and exhilaration. The experience was a reminder that hidden talent, quiet dedication, and courage could create moments that would be remembered far longer than the evening itself. The piano, now silent, seemed almost to shine a little brighter, a witness to the unexpected magic that had unfolded. The rest of the evening continued with a gentle rhythm, but the atmosphere had shifted. Guests spoke in low, excited tones, reflecting on what they had just heard. The waiter moved among them once more, carrying trays with ease. But now there was a subtle recognition in the eyes of some guests, an acknowledgement that this person, previously unnoticed, had just shared something extraordinary. And somewhere in the soft, polished glow of the ballroom, a quiet truth lingered. Sometimes, the smallest opportunity could reveal the greatest gifts, and courage could transform even the most ordinary night into an unforgettable story. The room was still, but the anticipation lingered, like a quiet hum under the surface. The waiter's hands hovered above the keys, feeling the smoothness beneath each fingertip. The first notes of the performance had faded into memory, yet the energy in the room had only grown. Every eye was now on the piano, not out of curiosity, but in expectation of something extraordinary. The waiter took a deep breath, letting it fill the chest and settle into the fingers. Music, long imagined in private, was about to speak freely in the center of a grand ballroom filled with strangers. The first chord was soft but deliberate, a gentle ripple through the air that seemed to still the chatter completely. The melody unfolded slowly, almost shyly, and then gained strength with each passing note. Guests leaned forward, silent now, as if the air itself demanded attention. The waiter's body moved naturally with the music, swaying slightly, not noticing the glances from the crowd, focused entirely on the piano. Each key told a story, a language without words, carrying emotion across the polished floors and crystal chandeliers. As the melody deepened, the room changed. The walls that had once echoed polite conversation now reflected the quiet intensity of the music. Laughter and chatter had disappeared entirely, replaced by a collective listening that was almost tangible. The waiter's eyes closed, allowing the music to guide each hand movement. There was a rhythm in the fingertips, a connection that had been honed in countless private moments of practice, yet never exposed in such a public space. Now, it commanded the attention of a crowd that had never expected to be touched so deeply by someone who had simply served them dinner moments before. The notes rose and fell with emotion, sometimes soft, almost whispered, then bold and commanding. Each variation seemed to tell a story of longing, of quiet strength, of hope that emerges unexpectedly. The audience was captivated, leaning in as though trying to catch each fragile, fleeting sound. There was a sense of collective awe, a feeling that everyone in the room was sharing something rare and profound. The waiter's fingers moved fluidly, gliding across the keys, creating melodies that seemed to flow from the heart rather than the mind. A few guests began to close their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Some held their hands lightly over their hearts, drawn into the emotion without understanding why. The waiter, still immersed in the performance, noticed the shift not with sight, but with the subtle energy in the room. The music had become more than sound. It was connection, a bridge between performer and listener, a silent conversation that carried meaning in each pause and crescendo. The melody took on a gentle urgency, as if urging the audience to feel every emotion embedded in the notes. The waiter's hands moved faster now, but never clumsily, every chord deliberate and expressive. There was a bravery in the performance, a courage that came from years of practice in secret. In rooms where no one had watched, no one had applauded. Tonight, it was shared openly, and the reactions of the crowd mirrored the intensity of the music. Eyes glimmered with tears, lips parted in astonishment, and shoulders relaxed as the weight of expectation turned into admiration. Some guests shifted in their seats, leaning closer to the piano as if proximity could deepen the experience. Others remained standing, holding glasses forgotten in their hands, absorbed completely by the unfolding melody. The waiter continued, drawing on a well of emotion that had long been private, and translating it into a performance that was intimate yet public. There was a vulnerability in every note, a truth that could not be rehearsed or faked. It was real, and the audience felt it keenly. The crescendo approached, each note layering upon the last, building a sense of anticipation that vibrated through the room. The waiter's fingers moved faster, yet each chord was precise, each pause intentional. The melody seemed to hang in the air, holding the audience in suspended wonder. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that what they were witnessing was extraordinary. The elegance of the ballroom, the richness of the guests' attire, all faded into the background, leaving only the music and the emotion it stirred. A hush fell as the final notes approached, long and sustained, echoing across the polished floor. The pianist's hands lingered over the last key, letting it ring out fully, filling every corner of the room with resonance. For a moment, no one moved. The audience absorbed the final sound, savoring the conclusion of a performance that had transcended expectations. There was a momentary stillness, almost sacred, where everyone felt the weight of what they had just experienced. Then the applause erupted, not the polite clapping one might expect at a formal event, but a genuine, heartfelt response. Guests rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some even wiping tears from their eyes. The waiter remained seated, hands resting lightly on the keys, allowing the sound of appreciation to wash over. The music had spoken louder than words ever could, and the reaction confirmed that it had reached the hearts of every listener in the room. The host approached, visibly moved, and offered sincere praise, shaking the waiter's hand with a warmth that went beyond formal politeness. The guests continued to murmur their admiration, commenting quietly to one another about the unexpected talent and the emotional depth of the performance. Conversations were filled with reflection on the beauty of the music, the courage of the performer, and the way an ordinary evening had been transformed into something unforgettable. The waiter finally rose, stepping away from the piano with a quiet smile. There was a lingering sense of calm triumph, a realization that a hidden skill had been shared, and in doing so, had touched lives. The room's atmosphere had shifted subtly, but permanently. The guests moved differently now, their steps lighter, their smiles warmer, their attention more attuned to the moments around them. What had begun as a quiet night of service had become a shared human experience, an unexpected gift that would remain in memory long after the night ended. As the evening continued, the waiter resumed the usual duties, carrying trays, offering refills, and moving with the familiar rhythm of service. Yet the sense of connection remained, not just with the guests but with a newfound confidence. a recognition of what courage and hidden talent could accomplish. There was a quiet pride in the heart, a sense that ordinary life held extraordinary possibilities, waiting for the right moment to shine. The piano, now silent, seemed almost to glow in acknowledgement, a silent partner in the unfolding story, witness to a night where music, emotion, and courage combined to create something unforgettable. Even as guests returned to their conversations and laughter, the memory of the performance lingered. Eyes that once wandered now returned to the piano frequently, drawn by the echo of what had occurred. The waiter moved through the crowd with an ease and composure that had not existed before, carrying not just food and drink, but the invisible weight of admiration and shared wonder. The music had not only entertained, but had created a bond, a sense of shared humanity. Even among a group that often measured worth by wealth and status, there was a quiet understanding in the staff as well. They had seen something remarkable unfold and recognized the courage it took to step into the spotlight unexpectedly. Smiles were exchanged, nods of approval given in passing, all acknowledging that the evening had become something more than routine. In that moment, the waiter was not just a server but a storyteller, a musician, a conduit of emotion, a reminder that the most powerful performances often come from the most unexpected places. The night continued, but nothing felt quite the same. Guests spoke in softer tones, moved with more grace, and looked around the ballroom with a sense of wonder. The chandelier light seemed warmer, reflecting the change in energy. The waiter moved among them, attentive but now carrying a quiet authority, an unspoken recognition that talent and courage had revealed something profound. Each step, each gesture, was infused with the memory of the performance, a reminder that ordinary actions could ripple into extraordinary consequences. And somewhere in the quiet corners of the ballroom, the grand piano remained, polished and gleaming, a silent witness to the transformation that had taken place. Its keys held the echoes of emotion, a testimony to a night when music had bridged gaps, created connection, and reminded everyone present that beauty could emerge from the most unexpected moments. The waiter's hands, once tentative, now carried the knowledge that courage and passion could create a lasting impact, that the smallest opportunity could reveal the greatest gift, and that a single performance could turn an ordinary night into a story worth remembering. The applause had barely settled when a different kind of attention began to fill the room. Guests who had been quietly amazed now leaned closer together, speaking in soft tones about what they had just witnessed. The music had done more than entertain. It had created a moment of shared humanity. There were conversations about feelings long unspoken, memories stirred by the melodies, and an unspoken understanding that something extraordinary had occurred. The waiter, once blending into the background, had now become the center of admiration, yet there was a calm humility in the posture, a gentle awareness that the magic belonged to the music as much as to the performer. Some guests, still captivated, whispered to one another, comparing the skill of the pianist to renowned musicians they had seen, yet they all seemed to agree on something deeper than technical prowess. It was the emotion, the honesty in every note, that had touched them. They were drawn to the sincerity of the performance, the courage it had taken to sit at the grand piano without expectation, and share a private talent so openly. The waiter remained nearby, moving with trays and offering smiles, but every step carried a subtle weight of pride and fulfillment, the quiet satisfaction of having given something unforgettable. The atmosphere in the ballroom shifted in subtle ways. Laughter returned, but it was gentler, softer, touched with a sense of awe. Conversations were enriched with reflections on the music, and some guests even mentioned feeling inspired by the courage and authenticity they had witnessed. The waiter noticed the change, seeing the glow in people's eyes, the warmth in their gestures, the curiosity and respect that now lingered in their expressions. It was a delicate transformation, almost invisible, but it had taken place across every corner of the room. Some of the more observant guests began to approach, asking quietly about the pianist. There was surprise and curiosity when they realized the person they had admired was also the server, who had been quietly moving among them just moments before. A gentle excitement grew, a sense that they had stumbled upon something rare and unexpected. The waiter responded modestly, offering simple answers, but the warmth in their eyes conveyed gratitude for the recognition. It was a small interaction, yet it carried immense meaning for both the guests and the performer. The host, clearly moved, spoke with a few close associates about arranging future performances. The ballroom, once a place of structured elegance, was now buzzing with a subtle energy, an undercurrent of inspiration that was felt more than seen. The waiter continued serving with ease, yet each step and gesture now carried a quiet confidence, a sense that the evening had become something more than a typical formal event. There was a recognition that this moment, born of courage and hidden talent, had transformed the atmosphere entirely. Guests lingered near the piano, some curious, others contemplative, as if trying to capture the feeling the music had left behind. A few quietly ran fingers along the polished surface, marveling at its smoothness, while others simply stood nearby, absorbing the silence that followed the performance. The room was no longer just a place of luxury and sophistication. It had become a space of connection, of shared wonder, of reflection. The waiter moved among them with grace, attentive to every need, yet carrying the invisible mark of someone who had just created something truly memorable. The performance seemed to have a lingering echo, not just in the air, but in the hearts of those present. Guests who had arrived with carefully measured smiles and reserved gestures now spoke more freely, their movements less constrained, their expressions warmer. There was an intangible shift, a sense that the ordinary expectations of etiquette and social boundaries had been softened by the raw honesty of the music. The waiter, though still performing duties, felt a quiet sense of fulfillment that extended beyond applause and recognition. It was a connection, an understanding, a moment shared silently with every person in the room. A few guests approached, offering compliments and expressing amazement at the depth of feeling in the music. They asked how long the pianist had been playing, what inspired the melodies, and whether more performances were planned. The waiter responded with gentle words, careful not to overstate, yet allowing the gratitude to show. Each interaction was a delicate exchange, bridging the gap between service and artistry, humility and admiration. It was a reminder that the smallest gestures and choices could create profound human connections. As the evening progressed, there was a subtle rhythm that emerged. Guests moved about with renewed energy, yet they carried a sense of reflection with them. Waiters and staff navigated the room, attentive as always, but now the entire space seemed lighter, more alive. The performance had created not just entertainment, but a shared experience, a moment that lingered in gestures, glances, and quiet conversations. The waiter, moving seamlessly among tables, noticed how the audience carried the echo of the music, how it influenced smiles, postures, and tone. Even as guests resumed casual conversations, there was a shared understanding that something remarkable had happened. The music had not only filled the room, but had created bonds that transcended wealth and status, reminders that beauty, courage, and emotion could resonate universally. The waiter continued duties with precision, but each step now held a sense of purpose, a quiet acknowledgement that a hidden talent had bridged worlds in a way that few could have anticipated. The host quietly moved through the crowd, congratulating colleagues and staff, acknowledging the way a simple act had elevated the evening. There was admiration and a sense of wonder, not only at the skill but at the courage it took to perform under pressure. Some guests lingered near the piano, still reflecting, some even quietly humming fragments of the melodies they had just heard. The ballroom, once just a scene of elegance, had been transformed into a space where emotions were shared openly, quietly shifting the tone of the night. The waiter, aware of the impact, felt a quiet but profound sense of pride. Not pride in recognition, but pride in the act itself, in the courage to step forward, and in the ability to touch lives through something deeply personal. Each movement, each interaction, each response from guests carried subtle but powerful confirmation that the music had created a lasting impression. It was a reminder that the most meaningful moments often came unexpectedly, from choices made in courage and humility. As the evening continued, the guests began to prepare to leave, their steps slower, their smiles reflective, carrying with them a sense of having witnessed something rare. Conversations included references to the music, the emotion, and the courage it had represented. The waiter, still attentive, moved among them with ease, observing the subtle changes, the quiet conversations, the gentle acknowledgments that had not existed before. It was a ripple effect, small and understated, yet powerful in its reach. By the end of the night, the ballroom, now quieter, carried the invisible traces of a transformative experience. The chandeliers reflected light in a softer, more intimate way. The polished floors echoed more gently under footsteps, and the grand piano stood as a silent witness to a performance that had shifted the atmosphere and touched hearts. The waiter, finishing duties, felt the weight of the evening in a quiet, satisfying way. It was not the recognition or applause that mattered most, but the knowledge that courage, talent, and authenticity had created a moment of true human connection. a story that would linger in memory far longer than the night itself. The ballroom had begun to empty slowly, the soft hum of conversation returning as guests prepared to leave. Yet, even as the glittering doors closed behind them, the energy of the evening lingered, like the faint echo of music that refuses to fade. The waiter's movements, once seamlessly blending into the background, now carried the quiet confidence of someone who had stepped into a moment that changed everything. Each tray carried, each glass refilled, felt lighter somehow, infused with the memory of a performance that had touched every person in the room. The host approached quietly, a warm smile on his face, and spoke with a sincerity that was rare in such formal settings. Words of appreciation were offered, not only for the skill displayed, but for the courage it took to share a hidden talent. Without expectation, the waiter listened, a small smile forming, feeling the weight of recognition but refusing to let it overshadow the humility that had guided the performance. There was a deep understanding that the music itself was the gift, and the applause merely a reflection of what had already been given. Word of the performance began to spread beyond the walls of the ballroom. Guests, inspired and moved, spoke of the experience to friends and colleagues, recounting the unexpected story of a server who had captivated a room of wealthy and influential people. Some even suggested invitations to perform at other events, seeing in the talent not just entertainment, but the ability to touch hearts and create unforgettable memories. The waiter, however, remained grounded, understanding that recognition was fleeting, but the impact of courage and authenticity endured far longer. As the evening wound down, the staff gathered in quiet corners to reflect on what had occurred. Conversations that had been mundane were now tinged with wonder and admiration. Even those who had not witnessed the full performance spoke with curiosity, drawn in by the sense of something extraordinary happening right before their eyes. The waiter moved among colleagues with a gentle awareness, sharing smiles and quiet nods, feeling the unspoken respect and recognition that flowed from genuine achievement. The grand piano, polished and still, stood as a silent witness to the night's events. Its surface reflected the fading light of the chandeliers, and the keys seemed to hold a lingering warmth from the music that had passed through them. The waiter lingered near it for a moment, placing hands lightly on the smooth surface, feeling the subtle vibrations, remembering each note, each pause, each expression of emotion that had flowed through the performance. It was a quiet reflection, a private acknowledgement of a moment that had been both personal and shared with an entire room of strangers, guests who remained until the very end approached, offering words of admiration, curiosity, and gratitude. Some shared personal reflections on how the music had stirred memories or feelings they had not felt in years. Others simply expressed awe, struggling to put into words the beauty and depth of what they had heard. Each interaction carried a weight that went beyond formal etiquette or casual praise. There was an understanding that they had witnessed something rare, a story unfolding in real time, created by courage and a willingness to share one's gift. The waiter returned to duties with a renewed sense of purpose, moving with the same grace and attentiveness as before, but now infused with a quiet confidence. There was a recognition, even among those who had not spoken directly, that the evening had been transformed. The ordinary tasks of service had become a continuation of the story, each gesture a subtle echo of the courage, skill, and humanity that had been revealed through the music. It was a lesson in the power of opportunity, in the ability of one person to change the tone of a night, and in the enduring impact of authenticity. As the final guests departed, leaving the ballroom in a calm, reflective silence, the staff began to tidy the space. The chandeliers still shimmered softly, the polished floors gleamed under gentle lighting, and the piano sat quietly, as if resting after its own performance. The waiter paused for a moment, glancing at the instrument, feeling a quiet gratitude for the chance to share something deeply personal with an audience that had responded with genuine appreciation. There was a sense of completion, a quiet satisfaction that would remain long after the applause had faded outside. The city lights glimmered against the night sky, but inside the ballroom, there was a lingering warmth. The music, though no longer audible, had left an imprint on the air and in the hearts of those who had been present. The waiter's thoughts drifted to the moments of private practice, the quiet hums in empty rooms, the hours spent perfecting technique away from public eyes. All of it had led to this night, where hidden talent met opportunity and courage met recognition. The experience was a reminder that preparation, patience, and authenticity could combine to create moments that transcended expectation. The following days brought reflection and subtle changes. Invitations arrived, some for formal performances, others for more intimate gatherings, all curious to experience the skill that had enchanted a room. The waiter considered each carefully, understanding that the opportunity to perform was now intertwined with the responsibility to remain true to the music and the emotion it carried. There was no rush, no desire for immediate fame, only a quiet recognition that sharing one's gift could ripple outward, touching people in ways that were unpredictable and profound. Back at the hotel, life resumed its regular rhythm, yet there was a subtle difference. Guests and staff alike carried the memory of the evening with them, a quiet reminder that moments of brilliance could appear where least expected. Conversations now included stories of the performance, reflections on courage and authenticity, and a newfound appreciation for the quiet, unnoticed talents that often go unrecognized. The waiter continued to serve with grace, blending into the background when needed, yet carrying the invisible mark of a person who had transformed a night into something unforgettable. Private moments, after the bustle of the day, became opportunities for reflection. The waiter would sit quietly, remembering the notes, the reactions, the moments of connection with the audience. Each recollection brought a mix of humility and pride, the knowledge that something deeply personal had resonated universally. It was a reminder that the true value of talent was not in recognition alone, but in the ability to touch lives, inspire courage, and create shared human experiences. In the weeks that followed, the story of the performance spread quietly yet persistently. Guests spoke to friends, colleagues, and family, recounting the unexpected enchantment of the evening. Some returned to the hotel, hoping to glimpse the pianist again, to relive the magic, if only in part. The waiter's presence became subtly acknowledged, a quiet admiration from those who remembered the courage, skill, and humility that had created the moment. It was a testament to the power of authenticity, the enduring impact of courage, and the way one act could ripple through the lives of many. The grand piano remained in the ballroom, awaiting the next occasion, yet carrying the memory of the night it had been brought to life by someone whose courage and dedication transformed ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. The waiter's journey had shifted in subtle but profound ways, revealing the truth that talent, when combined with courage and authenticity, could transcend circumstance, status, and expectation. Every day, as the waiter continued the usual tasks of service, there was a quiet confidence, a gentle knowledge that the ordinary could become extraordinary with the right courage and dedication. The evening had proven that hidden talent, when shared, had the power to move hearts, inspire others, and create stories that would be told long after the last note had faded. It was a reminder that greatness often appears quietly, in unexpected moments, and that those willing to step forward, even when unnoticed, can change not only their own lives, but also the lives of everyone around them. In the end, the story of the evening became more than just a memory. It became a quiet legend within the hotel, an inspiration for staff and guests alike. It reminded everyone that courage, skill, and authenticity are gifts that deserve to be shared, and that even the simplest act of stepping forward could lead to extraordinary moments. The waiter, continuing to navigate the balance of service and artistry, carried this understanding quietly, letting it shape every action, every gesture, every note of music that might one day fill the grand ballroom once more. And in that balance, there was a sense of fulfillment, a connection to the world that had been made richer by a single, courageous performance.